When doctors told Lori DeCarver that her father's condition was due to pneumonia, she had her doubts.
And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you know, I know a lot of people that have had pneumonia, and I don't know anyone that's screaming, stop the suffering like this. This is agony.
Her dad, Arthur Ross Jones, died from a bed sore that turned gangrenous due to the neglect he experienced at a facility owned by nursing home giant Revera. But as Sandie Rinaldo and the W5 team found out in their latest episode, Neglected Care, Lori's case was far from isolated. For more on this, Sandie joins us in studio. Good to have you here this morning. A tough story, and not the only story. But let's start there with Lori's story and her dad.
Well, she came to us and told us that her father, very young at the time, 66, was at the beginning stages of Alzheimer's. He had something called Lewy body disease, which is basically dementia with Parkinson's. And he himself knew that it was time to go into a nursing home. He just felt he didn't want to put pressure on his family to look after him because there were a lot of needs required. So he went into a nursing home in Toronto, and about a year and a half later, he began complaining to Lori that bad things were happening, horrible things were happening to him. She thought he was hallucinating, and she actually went and spoke to the administrator, who said, you know, your father has Lewy body disease, hallucinations come hand in hand with that. She left it at that until one day she got a call from the hospital, went to see him. He was in very rough shape. And she herself, because he kept crying, as you heard in that clip, turned him over and saw this gaping hole with gangrenous tissue in it. In fact,
I can't imagine that moment.
She even
for her.
said there was feces in it, she
Right.
told us.
Right, absolutely devastating. So she goes on to explain that she felt like she was diving down a rabbit hole of sorts, trying to find some answers and talking to people. She ultimately found a lawyer.
Well, she went through the nursing home process, Ministry of Health, police, ombudsman in Ontario as well, and felt that she had no choice but to go to a lawyer. But that in itself, you know, we spoke to Manny Oakley, who is the lawyer in this particular case, and said it is not easy to win a case against a nursing home on an individual basis. So she went home and thought about it, decided to come up with this class action lawsuit.
And that was launched. And there were other cases of mistreatment. What can you tell us about those?
Well, 30 families came forward. We actually gathered them together. We had a bit of a town hall meeting in which we asked them questions. And there were similar stories of falls, parents falling, maggots in bed sores, patient-on-patient abuse, staff-to-resident abuse. And so Amanda felt she had enough to go forward with this class action lawsuit. Now, it's a legal process. It still has to be certified by a judge, and the judge could determine that there's no value in the case. But at this point, with 30 families coming forward, Amanda is pretty confident that something positive will come out of this.
And one of your questions I felt was so poignant, and you asked the group when you had this town hall, you said, is there any sort of comfort here knowing that you're with other families in this fight? And the answer was a little bit surprising, I found, because one of the women just said, no.
No.
Yeah.
She said, I'm so sorry that I have to hear all your stories, you know. It was difficult enough dealing with our situation, but to hear what you're telling me makes it even more difficult.
You spoke with Ontario's Health Minister, Eric Hoskins. What did he have to say about all of this?
Well, you know, they're very serious because I asked that question. I said, look, the families feel they have no choice. There's no one they can go to. They don't feel that the government is representing them, that they have no choice but to sue. And he said, that's not true. You know, we have inspectors who are going into the homes, those homes that in which there are more incident reports, they will follow up on a more regular basis. And they're planning to introduce fines and penalties, which they hope will be more than just a slap on the wrist, and make the homes accountable.
You also had a chance to speak with someone from Revera, the Vice President of Operations, and what was their response?
Well, he said basically that, you know, you have to think of a growing demographic of people who are getting older, the baby boom generation getting older, with more cases of Alzheimer's and dementia, so the needs are greater. He says under the circumstances, they're working within the provincial guidelines and doing the best they can. He says there's always room for improvement, and he did express his sympathy to the family.
And it's one of those things, you're watching this and you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes, because we will all be there one day, and our family members, many of them are there now.
Well, that's why it's become such a passion for me. When I get to that point, I hope that I'm able to be independent. I don't want to put that kind of responsibility on my children. None of us do. But if you're in a position where you do go into home, you want to make sure that it's safe and you're cared for and you're healthy and
Exactly.
you enjoy the remaining years of your life. We all want that.
Absolutely, Sandie. We appreciate you being here this morning. Thanks so much. You can watch Sandie and the W5 team's Neglected Care episode this Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on CTV.